Hey guys, Enter the Stars. Good morning. And interesting show today. So, this is the latest in the M. Night Shyamalan Film Fest, right? This guy's been around for decades, as long as I can remember, and has done some pretty popular films. The Last Airbender comes to mind, as well as, gosh, can you guys think of some other films that this guy has done? But this particular one, called Old, had some of the worst acting I think I've ever seen. But since he's a popular director and millions of people will still see this film, I stuck it out to get a decode in on this. So here's the film. It's called Old, and the video quality that I was able to get was pretty horrible. So today we're going to do a lot of talking, and I'm going to show you a few screenshots, and we'll get down to the bottom of this film. So let's get into the plot of this. Now, the plot goes something like this. There are several of these families who are invited to come to this island, basically. And it's basically what you would consider kind of like a fantasy island kind of scenario, where they're exclusive guests. They get to come to this island, but they very quickly find themselves in some kind of horror movie, where their hosts have unexpectedly entered them into some kind of bizarre medical experiment. And so what ends up happening is M. Night Shyamalan makes a cameo appearance as the bus driver who takes them out to this cryptic beach. And they're told to follow a slot canyon down onto the beach from the jungle. Now we're going to get into what all of this means, but first I have to tell you the plot, and then you'll be able to see the connections. So they're bussed out to this cryptic beach. They're given coolers and coolers full of food, which to them seems odd, but they don't think to question it because they're still on the high of being invited to this exclusive island. And they basically were supposed to stay for the day, but then they realize later that they were given some kind of drug before they got dropped off when they first flew onto the island. The first few hours go by without much happening, but then they start talking to each other, and they realize that each of them has some kind of medical condition. One guy has the beginnings of Alzheimer's, a lady has like epilepsy, she has like seizures, and each one of them has some kind of medical conditions. One has cancer. And so that's the first clue that something is not what it seems. And then there's a mother with two children. Here's the boy when he's little. They're like 6 years old, 5, 6, 7 years old, somewhere in that range. They start growing out of their bathing suits. And then soon after that, they grow into full teenagers right there on the beach. And they all look at each other and they realize that they're all starting to age rapidly. Then the next 24 hours, they experience the worst nightmare of their lives as they keep trying to escape back through the slot canyon. And they can't. They try swimming out into the ocean, and they can't. And each time that they try, they experience this intense disorientation, headaches, and it thrusts them right back down onto the beach. One girl tries to climb out through the top. She can't do it either. She falls down and dies. So one of these guys, one of the guests on the beach, starts experiencing dementia or some kind of Alzheimer's or something like that, or like dementia. He starts to go crazy. He starts trying to stab people. And as they realize that they're stuck in some kind of time trap, and they realize it's probably caused by rock and mineral under the sand of the beach, but all their attempts to escape fail. Now, it's interesting because some of you that are awake are starting to catch on to what this is really all about, because we talk about this subject all the time. So they come up with these different scenarios. They're like, okay, well, maybe if we slowly walk through the canyon, instead of trying to run through the canyon, Maybe we can figure out a way to get out of this place. But they all agree that, wow, if we slowly go, then every few hours that we are in the canyon, we're still going to age. And who wants to do that? And so for some reason, that doesn't work out. By the next morning, there are only two people left. The 6-year-old boy and girl, who are now looking like they're in their 50s, but their minds are still the minds of children. And they figure out that the only way out is to swim through the coral. Now, they barely make it by swimming through the coral. They almost run out of air as they're swimming underneath the water. They make it out and they report the laboratory to the police. What happened was there was this crazy laboratory that was doing experiments on them. And the drink that they were given in the beginning was one of many test drugs made by a pharmaceutical firm that discovered the time trap beach. They realized that they could use the beach to test these drugs over the course of a lifetime clinical trial in just 24 hours. Now, this relates directly to what is going on right now in our world with the sticker. Nobody knows over the course of a lifetime what the sticker will do. And in fact, I believe tomorrow's show, we're going to look at consent forms that every person who gets the sticker signs. And we're going to see what it says on the consent form. It clearly states that these list of effects may not be a complete list of what people are experiencing, which suggests that they don't know the complete list of effects. Not to mention there were no long-term trials. Do you see how Hollywood programs us through entertainment? Even doing a film like this. Now, the pharmaceutical company rationalizes these experiments in the film for the greater good. And they say that we're saving millions of lives by doing these experiments on the few unlucky, unwilling participants. So at first, when I started watching this film, like I said, it was really hard to get to. The acting was horrible. It was almost intentionally horrible. I don't know why someone would do something like that. Actually, I do. Because I know that, what was it? The guy who did Star Wars, he talked about the acting and why it wasn't intentionally horrible. It was some kind of Elizabethan form of directing in which the actors were supposed to be kind of, I can't even say the word, but you know what I mean. Some of the Star Wars films were highly criticized for their poor acting, but George Lucas said it was intentional. So anyway, let's get back to this. So I had to have a long, hard think about this one to figure out what this movie was really about, what the elements in the film really meant, and then it hit me. The people on the beach are us. Now, let me make sure you guys are with me before we keep going on with this. The people on the beach are us. And I'll explain. The sands of time going down through the hourglass. There's sand on the beach. But it goes deeper. We are trapped inside the firmament time warp. There is no escape except through the narrow gate. In this case, the narrow gate becomes the coral that they swim through at the end. Let me type in coral so you guys can get an image of this in your mind to see exactly what happened. Coral. See if they have any screenshots from it. And this is at the very end of the movie. Yeah, it does not show them swimming through the coral, but that's what they do at the very end. So, basically, the coral. So, we are born, we age, and we die inside the firmament. There's no way out except through Jesus Christ. Now, our bodies also represent this cage that we're in. The rib cage is the prison body. Do you know there are 2, 3, and 7 ribs for a total of 12? That's the beast, room 237. And this is our cage. Now, God wants us in this lifetime to basically draw close to him. We're born into this matrix, this prison, but through the course of our life, we learn these lessons, some of them very hard, until we are reunited with him through his son. That's the goal of this life. And the next life is eternity. So we're not supposed to get too hung up on this life, about things we've lost, even people that we've lost. We're not supposed to get too hung up on that, because on the other side is eternity. This is like a proving ground. We're supposed to do our very best job to try to be decent human beings to ourselves and to others. Making sure your temple is intact. Making sure that others around you are happy and that you are having a good influence on them. And sharing the gospel about the way out of this matrix and the love of Jesus Christ. That's what we're supposed to be doing here. Now, you can see the firmament wall here along the beach. Here's M. Night Shyamalan, and you see the firmament wall all along the beach. You'll see if there's any other pictures of this, because they make it very distinct that there is a prison here. And the wall kind of reminds me of the Antarctic wall, the border, the barrier that is keeping us all locked in. And so you'll see that play out in the film. Now, throughout the course of the film, the characters in the movie, they each have to confront their demons. One woman is so vain that when she was young, she starved her body of the correct nutrients so she could be thin. But then in the end, she rapidly ages into osteoporosis. And her death is one of all of her bones being broken almost simultaneously and healing in the wrong position until she turns into this decrepit ball of pain and suffering, and then she dies. So the lesson in this film is not going to extremes, taking care of your temple, not being vain at the sake of your body. It's okay to take care of your body. In fact, God wants us to, but there's a point at which people do not give their body what it needs to sustain itself. Now, in another storyline, this couple here, they resolve their marital issues as they realize that over the course of time, all that really matters is love, that people's looks change, everything changes. But at the end of your life, you want to have someone standing next to you that supports you, that is going all in with you through this life, won't forsake you, will not leave you. And they come to terms with that as they progress through their rapid aging. Now, one thing you'll notice in the film is that most of the men get Alzheimer's before they die. This guy, he's one character. He's the only one that dies prematurely. Well, another guy does too, but basically this guy, his name is Mid-Size Sedan. He's like a rapper. He's on the island. And he ends up getting killed by one of the other guys who gets Alzheimer's, who gets all paranoid of him and basically takes him out. So this Alzheimer's, or I guess you can call it dementia, is very dangerous, and they end up having to take the guy out. So the pharma company aspect to all this is exactly what we're experiencing right now. They skew the scientific outcomes to bring unsafe products to market. This is documented. Every drug, almost every drug that I can remember, ends up being a long-term experiment. Why? Because they don't take the time to test these things for decades. They'll test it for a few months or maybe a year in a very long-term study, and then it comes to market. And nobody knows the long-term consequences. And this has all kinds of implications, because what if they wanted to shorten the human lifespan? And maybe what if they went back in time and looked at things that prematurely took people out and said, oh, we're going to put a little of that in everything, and we're going to do the population control for ourselves, which is completely plausible because all it needs is a stamp of approval from the F to the D to the A, and people will think it's safe. One example that I was reading about, and as we get into the coral aspect to this and what the coral means, is calcium carbonate. I was reading about this in my studies here, looking into this, and they had acknowledged that way back when they would give people huge amounts of this and it would cause health problems, and nobody knew what was causing it until they realized what it was. And it was given to people for like indigestion or something. Maybe we'll read into that as we get into the show. So there's these future consequences that few can ever anticipate. And it's weird how they're pushing these stickers so hard when they have no idea how it's going to affect people 5 years from now or even a year from now. And so I believe this film was foreshadowing things that would come. People put way too much trust in science. Look what happened with the opioid crisis and San Monto and the long list of other things that we were told were safe, then ended up not being safe. So let's dig into this coral and see what that's all about. So M. Night Shyamalan chose the coral as the way out for the two children that had now become adults, the last remaining survivors. And I dug into coral, and I'll admit it didn't hit me right away what this represented. But then I just sat and thought about it. I prayed about it, and the answers emerged. And the coral are like a network of trees. Here's some coral right here. We've seen this symbolism repeated over and over again. The trees being conduits to other dimensions, the very topic that we've spoken about over and over again on this channel. Many of you will remember the King Kong decode we did, King Kong versus Godzilla, where he was in the opening scenes trapped underneath this firmament. And what did he do? He threw a tree stump or a tree trunk at it, remember? And this same imagery is repeated in many films. Remember Katniss from the Hunger Games? And she shot an arrow, a bow and arrow made from trees, wooden bow and arrow. Shot that up into the firmament, into the ceiling of the game in which she was trapped. Around the cornucopia, which is fruits and vegetables, which is also symbolic of the trap that we're in. Fruits and vegetables come from vines and trees. We're all from the tree of life, but stuck in the trees of the knowledge of good and evil. Now, there are many, many other examples of trees being the way out, but there is only one tree, the narrow gate. In this case, Jesus. The tree was a cross. He gave himself up as a willing sacrifice, which opened a gate for all those who believe in him. He actually calls it a gate. He says it's called the narrow gate. The path is narrow. Imagine it like a tree trunk and your water coming up through the roots and traveling through the trunk. It's a narrow gate to be reunited with him. But there's something else more scientific about coral that I think that M. Night Shyamalan is getting at here. And it ties directly into yesterday's show, for those of you that were able to make that, and the discovery that we made about that. So what did we talk about on yesterday's show? Well, there's two places on Earth where large amounts of a certain mineral are found. The mineral is used to melt ice. And this mineral is very similar to what coral is made out of. The mineral is calcium chloride, road salt, and it exists in a mineral called shinerite or shingerite, also known as Antarcticite. And the only places on Earth where it is found is at the Tower of Babel in Antarctica. Two places where I believe the men of renown tried to break through the firmament. What were they doing? Were they trying to de-ice the firmament? Were they trying to de-ice the ice wall of Antarctica? I believe they were. And coral is also calcium based. A different kind of calcium carbonate. This is coral. Now, calcium chloride, which is the road salt, turns into what coral is made out of when you add sodium carbonate to it, or salt. What happens when aqueous solutions of calcium chloride, road salt, and sodium carbonate are mixed, which is salt? It turns into calcium chloride. Did I say that right? Or calcium carbonate? Sorry. Calcium carbonate. In fact, something strange happens in the oceans. Coral can only grow when there is enough calcium chloride in the water, enough road salt in the water. And I say road salt just to give you an idea of what this substance is. It can only grow where there's enough calcium chloride. Now, there is a relationship between the rare mineral found at Babel in Antarctica and coral. I believe the coral in the M. Shyamalan, I can't even say his name right now, M. Night Shyamalan film is, I believe, representative of the coral, the weapon that Nimrod tried to use to melt through the ice wall firmament from the towers of Babel. The book of Yasher says that they shot arrows up into the firmament. Maybe this is what they were made of. God sent them back with blood on them. And that is actually the color of the calcium chloride that is in this rare mineral called shinerite that is found around the Tower of Babel in northwestern Iraq. So that's pretty much the breakdown of the film Old and what they were getting at. Let's look at some of these screenshots here. The beach, the sands of time, it all fits together. And many people also realize that the sands of the beach look like the whites of the eyes, and the oceans look like the blue eyes, and in the middle is the pupil or the pit, which is also, I believe, a place where that we call Sheol or center earth or hollow earth. The pit is the pupil. So there's lots of stuff in this film. There's probably more, but I hit the main highlights. Now, Friday, we got reading between the headlines. Lots of stuff to go over. Here's all the stories we have for reading between the headlines. Let's go through some of the topics here. Pro-migrant group asked court to block the border. So basically, Biden's acting as the T-Man did. Nothing's changed with the border. Just goes to show you there is no difference between these presidents. We got Capitol police dropping like flies with alleged taking of their own life, which I believe that this is probably more like a cover-up. We've got New York City now being the first major city to require passports to do a lot of things. and all kinds of other headlines. More shaming going on of the unstickered. So, what else do we have for you guys later in the week? Oh, we have this consent form that we're going to go over with a fine-tooth comb. This is the sticker consent form. We're going to go over also the attachments to it, which is the EUA fact sheet. And this is scary stuff. And then next week, we've got Loki. I just pretty much watched most of the series Loki. We're going to get into that on Monday. A lot to show you about that, because in the series, time is compared to trees and pruning. Again, confirming all the research that we've done over the last several years in which we've talked about all this, you guys. Trees are the dimensions that God set up. That's what trees are. And from the trees come family trees and people. You have a crown on your head. You have a crown. It's called the top of your head. You have limbs, which are your arms and legs. You have a trunk of your body or a core of your body. When you have children, it is called being fruitful. According to the Bible, everything is about the trees. Okay? So, that's what I wanted to show you guys today. Let's see what's going on in the chat here. Hang out with you guys. It was kind of a quick show. And apologies for not having any clips on this, but literally the copy that's out right now of the film Old is just very poor. It's a camera recording, and they didn't do a good job. You can't really hear it. It sounds boxy, and it would have just drove you guys nuts trying to listen to what they're saying. So, are we trees? Yes, we are a form of trees in a spiritual sense. We're not really trees, but we're built off of the model of a tree. You know, I noticed something amazing. I don't know what show I was watching. Let's take a look and see if we could find it. Let's see if they show us this here. Because this is when it all hit me. So, let's see if we can find a good picture here. Now, we all know about forests, obviously. But something strange happens if you were to be able to see a forest from the sky. The tops of these tree canopies look like stars. Some people have had these very high definition cameras. They've pointed and tried to zoom in on some of these stars. And if you look at the crowns of these trees from the top, let's see if we could find a very high resolution image here. They look like stars. See that? Now that's amazing. Because what that would indicate is that what is on earth is also in heaven. God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Wow. Let's see if there's other images of trees from the crown. There's much more striking images. The one that I saw was in the series Rain, and they had like a drone, and they were flying over the tops of the crowns of these trees. And you could definitely see that they look like stars from above. And it was amazing. And it hit me. It's like, whoa, that's amazing. Now, some books, like the Book of Enoch, says that we each have a star in heaven that represents us. It's kind of like our little gift. It's like a gift that God gives us, that we can look in the sky and go, wow, one of those is mine. And I'll be reunited with it one day when I get through the narrow gate. Not that you are a star, but reunited with it, which is probably the original gift that God had for humanity before we fell. So think about that for a minute. These things are meant to strengthen your faith. They're meant to strengthen your faith because God said that there would be signs in the heavens. Well, maybe this is one of them. We'd done previous shows where we looked at seashells on the beach, microscopic seashells in the sand. We looked at sand, and we saw that sand and a lot of the shells, these spiral shells, different shapes of these shells, looked a lot like some of these galaxies that you can see with an amateur telescope. Now, we don't know how far away these things are, but I can tell you that with an amateur telescope, some galaxies are visible. Not very many, but they seem to match up with the general shape of these microscopic seashells in sand. I know some people are opposed to talking about anything that they can see in the sky, but understand that even with an amateur telescope, you can see a lot of these things in the sky, okay? So it's not just us taking NASA's word for for some of this stuff. Yes, they lie, but you got to know where to draw the line and understand there's something up there that we can all see. It's not just stars. There are galaxies that can be made out with an amateur telescope. So that's the point I'm trying to make. Not that they're trillions of miles away or billions of miles away, but that God maybe put those up there so we can compare it to the sand. Let's look at microscopic sand. These were some of my favorite shows going back over the years. How some of these look like some of our things in the sky, these spiral features, stars. You know, some of these galaxies are shaped like this. Pretty wild. Right? So, now God talks about the sands of the sea and the stars of the sky. When did he talk about that? When he was talking to Abraham and telling him about his seed. Now, this is a miracle because when this book was written, nobody knew that the stars of the sky looked like the sands of the sea. You would need a telescope and a microscope, right? But God knew. He said, I will multiply your descendants like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. God was drawing a definitive connection between sky, stars, and sand. Before anybody on earth, no man knew that they looked the same. And if that doesn't tell you the truth, I don't know what will. So, that ended up being the truth because Abraham went on to represent the seed before Christ, in which we've looked at the history, the biblical history during this time period, and it represented a spring or a green period of the rainbow timeline, in which there was a huge growth in the seed of Christ based on the promise God made to Abraham. It was the green period of the rainbow. If you don't know what we're talking about, go back to the rainbow Earth history timeline that we did on this channel probably about 6 months ago. We basically superimposed the colors of the rainbow over the entire biblical history of mankind, and it matched up. We were able to match up the colors to each period in biblical history, which was amazing. Now we're in the purple. We're in the purple part of the rainbow, the purple rain. This is the end of Earth history, and very soon Christ will be back. So, okay, let's go into the chat here. Yes, the seed go. See, even the seed. Thanks, Boomer Bear. Goes back to the tree terminology. Everything seems to. Now, this is where you can have fun in the Bible, because you can go back in to the Bible on like some of these websites, Bible Gateway, Bible Hub, and type in certain words like fruit. If you type in fruit, it'll give you all of the passages in the Bible, Old Testament and New Testament, that talk about fruit. And there you will find something amazing. You'll be like, wow, this is all connected. If you can start with tree, you can type in tree and look at all the times that a tree was talked about and just read the verses and the passages straight through in order. And all of a sudden, the truth emerges. You know, the Bible says that in the last days, knowledge will increase. Well, when ever did a biblical scholar throughout the history of mankind, when were they able to just do a search word and read through straight through the Bible for one particular topic? They were not able to do that. They had to look one by one and search and flip through, write everything down, and then they could do it. But it probably took them a really long time. Whereas now at our fingertips, we simply type in a search word and we can see all the passages in order. And guess what? It reveals deeper truths that we could have never imagined. And that's how I found a lot of the things that we've discovered on this channel. By doing that, that's how my biblical research goes. I find a topic, I type in some key words, and then boom, the truth emerges. Like people being compared to fruit. Fruitfulness. The womb. The womb is like a gourd, you guys, with seeds in it. It's a gourd. It's amazing. So, everything is based off of trees. And our goal is to get with Jesus and get back through the trees, see the forest from the trees, so to speak, and get back to the tree of life. And leave behind the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which I believe is the choice. This is the choice tree. We're going to go back into the good tree where God's going to erase the ability to do evil. You will not be able to raise your hand against someone anymore. You will not be able to hurt people. There will be some kind of thing that stops you from doing that. The laws of that tree, the frame of that reality, the frame of that dimension will not allow for it, because God will eradicate that. But he had to allow the tree of the knowledge of good and evil because he was challenged by the devil. So we're in a giant courtroom, and God is letting all this play out so we can all open the scrolls one day and go, you know what? God had to do this. He had to take away the ability to have choice to do evil. He had to change our bicycles from a 10-speed to a 3-speed. And we're all going to say that was the right thing to do. But had he not let all this play out, then people would have said, oh, so you're not going to give the devil a choice to do evil? Well, that's not fair, God. That's not fair. And it's taken many years to come to these conclusions, because the enemy is out there challenging God all the time. And every time he challenged them, I would look at it and I would go, oh, okay, let's listen to that point and figure it out. And then we would research. And we go, that's why God did this, or that's why God did that. Okay? So that's how all this works. All right. Well, you guys, I'm going to go ahead and get off of here, and I will see you guys bright and early tomorrow. I'm really excited about the shows we have planned over the next couple days and into next week. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Open up your Bible. I would say each day to stay in the Word and to make it fun, go to Bible Gateway or Bible Hub and just pray and say, God, give me one word that you want me to learn about in your holy word. And that could be the word tree, or the word fruit, or the word arrow, or the word giant, or whatever it is that you want to research. and just pray for God to reveal to you the deeper truths of the Bible that maybe you hadn't learned in church before. And he will do that. And it will be amazing. It will build your faith, because we live in a day now where everybody is challenging God. Everybody is challenging our belief systems. Everybody is trying to discredit the Bible. And part of my job here is to bring you back to the truth, to help strengthen your faith. I've been given a huge task here, and I don't always get it right, but God is impressing upon me that we need to get back in the Word. We all need to be praying more. We all need to strengthen our faith. We all need to believe in Jesus, because it's coming. There's a lot of resistance out there, and it might feel like the enemy is winning, but he's not, because as this knowledge increases in the last days, God is giving us the tools to help those who want to see the truth to find it. Amazing revelations, new discoveries. Okay? So, I love you guys. Have a great day.